Alright, I think we're live. Looks like we have chat, looks like we have audio. Now we just need people. I don't really have very much of a schedule here to talk about today, but just whatever you guys want to talk about, really. Doesn't matter a whole lot to me. We got audio. Paul, welcome. Thanks for checking in. Theron, how's it going, buddy? I assume we have audio because nobody said I don't, so hopefully it's a little louder this week too. I changed some things on the microphone, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Ashley, Kevin, how's it going, guys? All is well. Thank you very much for asking, or stating rather. But today I was working on the SCX10 Pro again. The factory chassis here, and the Oracle behind it. I was doing some angled skid stuff with it. No Wes tonight. He said he's tired. He's sleepy, so he's going to bed. I've seen a couple of SCX10 Pros pop up, replacement chassis pop up recently over the last week or so, that were basically, bolt-on replacements, but they didn't change the angle of the skid at all. So I decided to probably do that. Not going to really talk about how much angle I put on it just yet, but there's plenty. There's plenty of angle on there. I know that's hard to see. There's no light on the other side of the camera, so hard to show that really, but especially with them all being the same colors. So yes, I did see your order for the C1 Pro come through Saturday night. Wesley should have that shipped. I think he was shipping that today, so you'll have tracking on that tomorrow, more than likely. He'll email me all the tracking numbers for the stuff that he has to ship. I'm sure he'll email me those tonight, and then I'll update tracking in the morning when I get to the shop. So you should have tracking on that soon. A SCX6 high-low would be insane. Yeah, it would be. It'd be pretty difficult. Just the sheer size of the motor. I'm looking at my SCX6 across the shop here. The size of that motor would make moving the skid forward pretty difficult. So I don't know. I don't think that's really on the table for right now. Plus the chassis is very long, and I would have to do a bunch of switching and changing around on my router to be able to cut them in carbon or G10, just because of the sheet size, the material size that it would take. The SCX6 chassis is like 26 or 28 inches long, and I normally order 24 by 24 sheets of material, so it would make me buy material that I don't normally buy, and it would make me modify part of the machine that I don't. It wouldn't be difficult to modify, but it's just not something I really want to fiddle fart around with. I lost my 2mm driver. Anyway, I guess I can show you guys a little bit of this Oracle chassis. Are there any 6x6 frames left on the site or in the pipeline? There are not. They are not on the website at all. I don't know what Wesley has going on for 6x6 chassis. There are team drivers testing some stuff, so that stuff's not ready yet. We can always cut you one of our other style 6x6s that we already previously offered, but I don't believe there's any actually in stock. So it would probably be like a 10-day lead time or so on that stuff if you wanted one. So here is Here is the Oracle chassis lined up with the SCX10 Pro. And it's going to be difficult to show you guys, but even with a flat skid, it's going to be very, very difficult to show you guys. But with a flat skid, you can just see the bottom of the carbon peeking down below. Sorry, it's super difficult to show on this camera without any light on the backside. I'll do better next week for that. I think I've got a studio light I'll put on the backside here. So anyway, this is the regular Oracle chassis that I've had on my SCX10 Pro since about a month ago, whenever the SCX10 Pro came out. But I was talking to a couple of people, and I've seen some replacement chassis, angled skid replacement chassis, but they haven't really changed the angle of the skid, so I changed the angle of the skid. I don't know how to better show that. Sorry this week, guys. I guess I could run over there real quick and grab a light, but I don't really feel like being away from the camera long enough to drag a light out of the corner and set it up. So, but yeah, I'm working on an angled skid. The motor mount locations are going to be the same as the Oracle, but it is quite a bit more angle than the factory chassis. So this is about level. Get my bearded self out of the way. I don't know. I probably should try to find a light real quick. Or pause. Let me try to turn this off. Hey, there we go. That might be a little easier to show you guys stuff. I could try putting a piece of paper behind it. That might help. There, you gotta kind of get a vision there. So quite a bit of angle on it, but is the 10 Pro skid a different bolt pattern than a 10.2 skid? The SCX10 Pro skid mounts in two further out locations than a standard SCX10 base skid does. So, like, these two holes in the stock chassis here would be where a standard SCX10 skid, like the Brazen Pro skid or a Vader skid or something like that, would line up in these two holes. But the SCX10 Pro skid mounts in these two outer holes. Which, the nice thing about that is, means that if you have an SCX10 Pro, you can still use a standard SCX10 type skid. It will still bolt to the rails. But if you bought a SCX10 Pro transmission and skid, you would not be able to bolt it into a SCX10 or 10.2 chassis without drilling a couple holes. Reverse compatible, not, or forward compatible, not reverse compatible. So, not terrible, but just a little different. And again, like last week, we were talking about, people were asking about 4-link on the standard Oracle Class 1 chassis. I do have those links on the website now. So if somebody wanted to, that had a Class 1 legal Oracle, and wanted to run 4-link and axle mounted servo for whatever reason, if you're not using it for comp or whatever, I do have links on the website. They do come with the Traxxas rod ends, so and you can use the factory rod ends, but it changes the caster angle, and you can like mix and match one factory end and one Traxxas end on them also, so you can kind of dial in your caster where you like it. Personally, I run a little bit more caster probably than someone who's not using it to comp with would, but yeah, either way works fine, and mix match is fine also. I think I've got them on the website for like $25 for the pair of links and the Traxxas rod ends included. So not really making any money on them, but gets them out of a parts bin, because those links were links that I had left over from either ordering the wrong thing or them getting manufactured wrong or me measuring them wrong. Regardless, that they were in a parts bin that I didn't really get to use. So that looks sweet. Definitely want to get one. Are you going to cut them out of carbon fiber? Yes. So this one is G10, this angled skid one, because I don't really prototype in carbon fiber. But this one did fit the way I wanted it to fit, so I did make one in carbon fiber. So I will take this truck out. It's supposed to be decent weather on Wednesday here, so I will take it out on Wednesday and run it some, and keep everybody posted on the fan page, like how testing's going. When will they be on the site? I got to do some testing on them. I literally did this morning. I was sitting on the computer on Saturday night watching Supercross, and watching Supercross on TV, having an adult beverage, and goofing off on the computer, and decided to draw up a chassis. Well, between the heat races and whatever, decided to modify a chassis. So then when I got here this morning, I loaded up some material on the machines and got to cutting. But the regular Oracle chassis, I think the last one on the site just sold this afternoon, so I need to cut some more of these tomorrow and put some more on the site. But this is a decent demonstration. So like, this is a 1/8" carbon fiber, and it's flexible, but pretty rigid. It's difficult to bend, where this is an 1/8" G10, and you can really get a whole lot more bend out of a G10 chassis than you can a carbon fiber. And then the factory aluminum rails, you can flex them, but if you bend them, they're bent. So you don't want to do that. Jan, how's it going, dude? Yeah. So I have talked about this before in the past, about using chassis braces to tune how your truck handles, and this is a perfect example of, you can, just by adding a brace or two in the chassis, or moving a brace or two within the chassis, you can take a lot of the twist and flex out of the rail set. This is also why typically the skid plate is wider than the dual servo mounts will be, because when you intentionally bow the chassis like that, you're adding stressors elsewhere. Like you're making the chassis more rigid by purposely bending it, but then you're moving the stress in different areas of the chassis. And you can, like I said, if you add or move bracing, you can change the way the chassis handles. Kind of fun. If you ever get a free afternoon and have a G10 chassis, it'll work on carbon chassis, just it's not as drastic. But if you have a G10 chassis, you can fiddle around with brace placement and see how it handles differently. So like when you have the truck and say the driver rear tire is fully compressed, the rear shock's compressed, and the passenger front's fully compressed, if you move bracing in the rear of the chassis, you can actually get the chassis to twist. So let's say you get in a spot where you've got one corner and the opposite corner fully compressed and you still have a tire off the ground. If you have less bracing, say in the back of the chassis, you can just like stop or slow down, to a real slow creep, and the chassis will actually settle in a little further than the suspension will allow. Just another little tuning tool. When are you going to have Mammoth Zero wheels in stock? I need to make wheels. It is now at the top of my list. I have material on hand. I was working on projects for other companies, and those projects are complete now, so now it's time to work on my stuff. I should have maybe done a little bit more prioritizing of my stuff before I did other people's stuff, but other people's stuff pays the bills too. So got to keep the machines running, got to keep the lights on somehow. So it's at the top of my list. Just, to make 50 sets of wheels takes a decent amount of time. So that's more it than anything. It's just having the available time. Having the material on hand's the easy part. It's just having the actual time to machine the stuff. But they should be soonish, couple weeks. You guys let me know, I suppose, if you want me to put them on the website raw or have them anodized, and if you want them anodized, what colors. So I do have a local anodizing shop. They're about 10 minutes from here that I've worked with in the past quite a bit with other, like when I did the small batches of the Team Garage Hack wheels. So I just box everything up, write colors on them, and drop them off at the anodizer, and they call me 4 or 5 days later and tell me they sent me an invoice. So it's nice to have them close and easy to work with. But I like the raw wheels too, man. They it's hard to beat the shine of a raw wheel. Want a green high-low. I've never done a green chassis. I've done the like the silk weaves that Corrupt Carbon Works offers and that now G-Speed offers. We've done red, gold, and blue. And then we did a purple e-glass. It was like a regular carbon fiber core material, and then a purple, basically fiberglass layer on top, because they didn't have, you can't really dye black carbon to purple. So they do a dyed fiberglass layer on top, which is what the purple chassis were. It's called e-glass, but it was a carbon core. So, yep, I definitely like the raw wheels myself. You get them in the right light, and they're just rainbows and reflections and pretty cool. I prefer a raw wheel more. What is up? Just another night in the shop, hanging out. Wife's putting the kiddo to bed tonight, so just another hangout. I didn't really have anything scheduled. I didn't really get a whole lot accomplished at the end of last week. I just had all kinds of stuff going on, and life stuff got in the way. I think I had mentioned a couple weeks ago, it's been 2 weeks now, but my grandma had fallen in my aunt's driveway and broke her femur. So we've been dealing with that. She normally watches my son in the afternoons after he gets off the school bus. So I've been having to bring him here. So I've got a 6-year-old running around the shop while I'm trying to get things accomplished. It doesn't work out all that well. So it's making things a little difficult. And then the wife was working half days from home last week. So 2 weeks ago I had the kid here, and then last week my wife was working from home half days, and the one day the dog decided to eat an Ethernet cable. The dog's over a year old and has never chewed up a cable in her life. Just decided to annihilate an Ethernet cable. So had to leave here, go home, make a new Ethernet cable so the wife could finish working for the day. That was interesting. But then while I was home, I'm also in the middle of having to deal with getting a septic replaced at my house, and the septic guy just randomly showed up. I just happened to be home fixing that Ethernet cable, so it was nice that he actually I didn't have to leave to come back home. I was just about ready to leave the house to come back here and continue working, and I saw his truck pull up. I'm like, well, if he'd have been 10 minutes later, I would have had to turn around and come back. So, oh man, just put my man in the ground yesterday. Oh, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, losing people sucks. Hate that. But my grandma's 83 years old, and like I said, it's been 2 weeks today since she fell and broke her femur, like right at the hip joint. So they just went in and put a rod in there. But she came home the following day from the hospital, and they told her up the stairs, just do your normal thing, use a walker if you have to. But so she's been rocking it. She's been tough. Haven't really had to do a whole lot other than, taking things up and down the stairs for her, or take her coffee in the morning. So yeah, replacing a septic system sucks, and the multiple quotes that I've gotten aren't looking good for the home team. So I was expecting a roundabout price, and it's about 70% higher than that. So not cool. But it is what it is. It has to get replaced. You can't just... I could just continue having it pumped, every couple of months so I don't have to deal with it, but $7K, I wish it was $7K. Good grief. I think I have one of the quotes over on my bench over there, but the guesstimate that the guy gave was 24 to 28. So that's cool. Another guy said roughly 20. So it's 20K. Yep, I was expecting to be in the 15-ish range. My dad just had to have his replaced, and he's about a mile down the road. But if you can dig the hole for him, it might make it cheaper. Yeah, the issue at my house is I have a tri-level house, and the depth of the plumbing coming out of the house is basically just below where the new county code heights are. So I have to have a main septic tank, and then I have to have another tank for water, and then that gets pumped out into the finger system out into the leach field of the yard. So it's expensive. He's like, well, we could demo your downstairs bathroom, and we could add an ejecting toilet and change the height of the plumbing. And I'm like, this all sounds like way more than just doing the damn septic. He's like, yeah, it's not going to be any cheaper. I'm like, then don't even bother. It sucks. 35-year-old septic. Yeah, this one, the one at my house was done, was installed in the mid-'80s, so it's the same age. So, and the one that my dad just bought a house 2 years ago, and it was built the same year mine was built, and his failed this spring, last fall also. So I guess in our area they last 35 years or so, and that's the end of it. And kind of is what it is. So like I said, it sucks, but what are you going to do? You just got to write the check and hope it lasts another 30 years till the house is paid off. You don't have to think about it again. Yeah. Build mine to outlast me. I hope I don't ever have to do it again, because I'd hate to see what the price is going to be 30 years from now. I remember when I was a kid hearing people complaining about $4,000 or $5,000 for a septic, and now they're almost 30. The one quote was, $24,000 to $28,000. That's insane. I don't want to pay that, but whatever. Could just continue getting it pumped, but you're going to end up spending the same amount of money eventually anyway, so you might as well just do it. I'm just hoping that one of the quotes comes back in at 17, so I can tell the 24 to 28 guy to go away. But whatever. Done talking about septics. Back to the Oracle, I suppose. But yeah, this is the standard SCX10 Pro Oracle chassis. If I cover my face, it kind of zoomed. There we go. We got some focus. Oh, there we go. Just regular carbon. And then this is the prototype from today. So, you can see there's a pretty decent amount of angle on that skid. It's brazen based out of Texas. Love that blue 4Runner TRX4 axles. What do you offer for leaf spring setups? Keep the passion going. So I am in northern Indiana, and Wesley is in Austin, Texas. So Wesley used to live up here, and when Brazen started, Wesley lived a couple of miles down the road from me, and it made it a lot easier, made life a lot easier that way. But Wesley got a job opportunity in Texas, and he took it. So that's why sometimes if you order from the website, sometimes the stuff will come from Texas, sometimes it comes from Indiana, sometimes it comes from both. Just depends on what you ordered and who has what in stock at the time. But yeah, Wesley's 4Runner is cool. That's one of the trucks that if he ever decides to get rid of it, that it doesn't really matter to me what the price is. It's going to end up on my shelf because I just can't let that one go somewhere else. I like that truck a lot as well. He did a very good job weathering the body and doing all that stuff. So, and then the leaf springs on TRX4 axles was something that not very many people were doing, and it just kind of worked out that way. As far as what rails we offer for leaf spring setups, that will be changing here pretty shortly. Wesley's in the final prototyping phases, and team drivers have stuff in hand to change up the leaf spring setups. So that's pending right now. Gonna need both of those. Yeah, like I said, the regular flat skid C1 Oracle, I think the last one sold this right around lunchtime today, so I gotta make some more of them. About to put my Oracle on the second 10 Pro kit I was able to find yesterday. Any specific setup recommendations? I run my rear links on the rear upper hole, and I run my front links on the front lower hole on my personal truck, and with 3-link and chassis mounted servo was how I had mine set up, and I really liked it. But I had a bunch of people asking whether you could use 4-link with it or not, so I had to mount the servo mount on the axle and do some links to show people that you can run 4-link on this, but it does require a pair of front upper links. Do you have some sliders to send with that C1 Pro? No, there are no C1 Pro sliders in stock right now, unfortunately. I would guess those are probably, say it says the 20th. I would bet the first weekend next month, probably. That stuff normally takes about 14 days. So, got a new 3D printer. Sweet. Now you can office space the old one on video. We talked about 3D printers quite a bit last week. I haven't even touched mine since then, so I am no input there. What one did you get? Like I said, I've got my Ender 3 over there on the bench that I have to blow the dust off every time I want to use it. I mainly just do prototype stuff before I machine it. That's about all I do with that printer anymore. I just don't like waiting on printers. Whatever you do, if you do Office Space that thing on video, make sure you get your hashtags right. Might wait till you get another one. Why? It was broken, wasn't it? It was giving you all kinds of fits. Just smash that thing on video. Hell with it. Take out your frustrations. It'll make you feel a little better. Well, it would make me feel better anyway. But get a pretty decent look at it there. After I changed the brightness on the damn camera, if I'd have known how to do that before the stream, that would have been cool. Just picked up an airbrush. I don't have any patience for painting. That's why I wrap my stuff. I can't, man, 3D printers and painting. I am a single color person. There's the body for my SCX10 Pro. It is a black, all black body. And for the first time ever, I waited until the paint was dry to peel the window masks. Well, it was mostly dry. I didn't get a bunch of black paint on my fingers peeling the window masks off. So yeah, maybe you can see a little better. There we go. Stock chassis compared to unnamed at this point prototype. Changing a bunch of belly geometry, really. Still gonna have use of the factory sliders. Factory sliders still bolt on. Factory motor mount, factory servo mounts, factory bracing. 100% bolt on with no cutting, grinding, anything. So there's that. It's a Prusa clone. Okay. Oh, the one you had. Yeah, sorry. I've never heard of that one, Braden, but it doesn't really matter. Like I said, I'm not super up on the 3D printer game. When are the high-low accessory mounts becoming available? Anytime now. I think all we have to do is descriptions and pictures for the website right now, and make sure, verify inventory levels, really. So soon. There's a servo winch mount one and just like a brace that you could stick your ESC and receiver and stuff to. So they'll be soon. I can't give you a specific date, but I think, like I said, I think all we gotta do is take pictures and do a description now. That's why I haven't painted my hard body for C1, C3. Yeah, I can't, man. I'd much rather just buy something. Even my class 1 body last year that I've chopped up, it's single color with a different color logo on the hood, and then my class 2 body was the opposite colors. So the main color of the body was this green, and then the logo was tan. I bought 2 colors of paint, and I painted 2 bodies with it. So I've seen a couple team drivers with them. Yeah, that the team drivers. I'm assuming you must be to the east, because I think most of those accessory mounts went east to those guys. But how long do you spend testing new chassis before putting them in production? That varies. The high-low and the Pro V2 were right about a year, with with me and Wesley testing them personally, and then having team drivers test and build them. Those two were about a year. The C1 Pro was probably 9 months. The SCX10 Pro, the Oracle chassis, was realistically about, well, from the time that I finished the design to the time that it was for sale was probably a week. But that week I tested the truck every day. Where I don't normally get to test stuff every day, I tested this every day. And I knew that the platform itself, since it's a direct swap chassis, that the platform itself had been tested so heavily that it was going to work pretty well regardless of how much testing I did, because I didn't really change any of the base geometry. I made a couple of tweaks here and there and did the flat belly on it, but realistically, as far as suspension geometry goes, I removed a couple of points, but I didn't change their locations, the ones that I have here. So there wasn't a whole lot of testing that had to be done with this one. Now the angled skid, not named version of that, will get tested longer, just because I made a lot more changes to it. So, but yeah, realistically, like I said, it varies greatly between. It depends on what you're doing with the chassis. The reason the high-low took so long was trying to figure out the best, or the link setups that worked the best, but were still easy enough for general masses to assemble. And changing chassis geometries, changing link geometries, stuff like that. It took a while. So, it changes. Waiting on my sliders from either you or Wes for my C3. Those are coming from Wesley. You should have tracking on those, I believe. But yeah, sliders are coming from Wesley in Texas, so that's why they're taking a little longer. If I would have had them here, it would have been one day, because you're Illinois and he's Texas, so. Yep, they're coming. The nice thing about our chassis is I can prototype in-house and I manufacture in-house, so I don't have to wait. If this angled skid chassis, this is the fourth revision of this this morning, just because, like, the first version, this hole here is for the rearmost transmission mount, and I brain farted when I was designing it, and when I angled the skid, I forgot that this hole was mounted to the transmission and it needed to go up with the trans. So, like, if you look here, this hole here, this one, that's where the back of the trans mounts on the standard Oracle, and this is where it has to mount on the angled skid version, just because the angle changed that much. So I was able to go through 4 revisions here in 45 minutes this morning at the shop with the truck in front of me, and just making, like I said, the first one I missed this. Then this specific revision, I added a hole down here for the slider. It didn't end up working out because it hits the skid. The screw hits the top of the skid, so you can't put a nut on it. But if I wasn't able to prototype in-house, I would have had to send the files off somewhere to get cut and then wait for shipping and all that stuff. So where other people it may take 7 to 14 business days to get a prototype in hand to realize that you fudged a hole, I get to make those changes right away. So, with Wesley and myself designing all of our stuff in-house and then manufacturing in-house, it helps a lot for being able to do things quickly. And that's being able to do things quickly like that helps with the testing and tweaking and tuning phases also. Don't have a tracking, so I guess we wait and see. Also had to get a new remote because my C1, yeah. Let me check real quick. You'll have tracking first thing in the morning. I have it. Yeah. I have your tracking number right here on my phone. I will get the website updated, and you'll have that information first thing in the morning. If you guys are coffee people, Gearhead Coffee has a discount code. If you guys are coffee people, let me know. I guess I can type and pin a discount code in the chat box if you want to try some Gearhead Coffee. I just got that text message. That's what made me say that. But oh, you have a comp this Sunday? You should have the sliders by Thursday or Friday. Let me just check. Copy. Paste. Now he just did the shipping label, so it probably won't have actual tracking, but it should say an estimated date. If my phone decides to work. Should have them Wednesday. So, but like I said, you'll have that tracking information tomorrow in an email. Let me do something here real quick. Hopefully I'm not goofing up my stream here by trying this, but I'm trying to do something here. Trying to get a link for the coffee. Copy. Well, says I have to sign into chat. Anyway, gearheadcoffee.com. Somebody wants to type this in the chat. It's Gearhead Coffee, and the discount code is AutoPro, AUTOPRO 25. For whatever reason, I can't type in my own chat. I don't know. I'm new to this, so they've got all kinds of different coffee and like the K-cup things and whatever, so it's pretty good stuff. And the people live right around the corner from me. Well, one of the employees and her husband live right around the corner from me, so pretty good. I typically drink about a pot of coffee a day, so I need coffee. I have an old brazen scale chassis for axial SCX10 and 10.2. It's old but awesome, and I'm still using it. Yeah, the older chassis, like what last week when Wesley was on here, this chassis was one of the original. It wasn't the original because it's got the forward motor mounts, but this is one of the first high-low chassis. So if you look at this chassis compared to like a C1 Pro, if you compare the bumper heights, like that's a pretty drastic difference there in height in belly clearance. And then like if you look at the length of the belly, like the belly area on this high-low is probably 4 times what we're doing now on the C1 Pros. Pretty wild. But these chassis did work really well. They still do, but the reason we were able, or we had to go so drastic with the lowering of the belly was because we were all trying to get the 3-gear transmissions and interiors and forward motor mounts underneath prefabbed interiors and floors. So you had to lower the belly of the chassis, which lowered your center of gravity, right? Because you lowered the transmission and the weight of the motor. But it also made these gigantic bellies that hung up on a lot of stuff, where now we can run these teeny tiny little belly areas yeah, fun history lesson there for you. And that was one of the things about the Oracle chassis. So if you look at the factory chassis, there's a decent amount of material here at the back of the skid that I was able to get rid of, by changing the design of the back of the skid area. So realistically, I was able to shave some off the bottom and a bunch off of the back here. To get you some more clearance back there. And then if you go to the angled skid version, there's a pretty big difference there in that stuff. I need to figure out a name. Well, I guess I better test this to see if it actually works first, but it bolts on and fits like I want it to, so I imagine it's going to perform like I want it to, but I obviously need to still test that. But I need to come up with a name for it, probably this week sometime. An espresso whore. I can't do espresso. I get the coffee shakes too bad on that stuff. Oh man, what else you guys want to see? Anything else you want a history lesson on, or anything else you want to see? I've got a Toizuki chassis here I need to do some work to. I don't want to call it the Oracle V2 because that would insinuate that it's the same but just updated. The Oracle is still, the Oracle's a brand new chassis, so it's not replacing that. So I don't want to call it a V2. It'll be an additional, chassis to the lineup. So I want to get away from the V2, and also I don't want to use Pro in the name. That's one of the annoying things. So like we've been using Pro in the name of our chassis for almost 3 years now. Actually, probably 3 years now, with the ATL Pro V2, and the C1 Pro. So now that the SCX10 Pro came out, it's kind of like now I gotta get away from the Pro name because it's gonna get confused with other shit. So kind of annoying. Morpheus? That's not a bad name. Not a bad name. I should put a poll up on the Brazen fan page and let people vote. Let people add suggestions and vote. And then I could provide a chassis to whoever name was the most popular. But the problem with that is I know a bunch of people are children, adult children, so I would probably have to moderate the names that people were giving out. Because it is still a business at the end of the day. I'm fiddling around in my hands here with this Toizuki V2. with the Ford motor mount and the transfer case and stuff. I stripped this truck the other day. I had Curry's underneath it, a set of rock jocks underneath it, and I sold them. So I stripped it back down to a chassis again. Every time I put this truck together, I end up pulling it back apart. Obviously, I'm not going to comp with a competitor's chassis, but I do support competitors by buying their product. So I need to put that truck back together. It's a fun truck to drive, but I need to do something with it. Maybe I'll put it back together and sell it or something, but I don't know. Chassis McChassis face, exactly. That's the type of stuff, or even more nefarious, that would come up in the names suggestions. We talked about C1 Pro sliders a little bit ago, Jeremy. They should be, I would assume they'll be like right after the first of the month. So that's one of the very few products that we have manufactured elsewhere. Other than, obviously laser cutting the aluminum chassis is done outside also, but that stuff has a very short lead time because of the vendors that we use. But the sliders are manufactured outside source also, and they typically have like a 2-week lead time. And we try to do rolling orders to where when we get down to 10 sets or whatever left in stock, they're already ordered before we need to. But sometimes you guys just decide to decimate our inventory randomly. So sometimes we don't have it, didn't catch it in time, or you guys just bought them really quick, faster than we thought. That's what happens when I show up late. It happens to me all the time, man, but no worries at all. What else? I did not get a chance to drive my Class 3 yet. I still have it sitting here with the Hyrax LPs. I've put about 10 minutes on it on the indoor course here. So, name of the kid from the Neverending Story, they were looking for the Oracle. That's not a bad idea either. Should probably get back to work. Gross. Bad idea. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. But anyway, my C1 Pro Class 3. I need to spend some more time with it tuning. I may end up having to swap the shocks to a 90mm. I don't think I have enough travel out of these 80mm. So, it is what it is. May have to change that. Just kind of looking around, seeing what we can talk about here. I did get some more batteries. I run these little GeForce 460 milliamp 4S batteries. This is what I comp with. I typically run one per course, but I only burn about 150 milliamps per course. So, Wes has joined the chat. Dinner ran late. Update on 3D printed stuff actually moving at the end of the month, so there'll be delays on those items this last week of the month. Yeah, I wasn't gonna throw that out there, but yeah, there are ordering stuff takes time, but he is also moving, so even if the stuff did come before he moved, it would be a little bit delayed just because he's moving. But yeah, anyway, I got a handful more of these. I normally take 6 with me to the comps, and I swap a battery per course. Realistically, I could probably run 3 courses on a battery, but the last thing I want to do is get to like gate 9 and have a battery die on a good run, because I normally have 1 course a day that I shit the bed anyway, and I don't want it to be over something stupid like a battery going dead. So this particular battery is 3 years old or so. It's not puffed up at all. It still works great, but it was time to get some more, and these will be knocked down a peg to practice packs or trail packs. I think the last time I ran these at Axial Fest Badlands, I was getting about 25 minutes or so out of a 460 pack, and wasn't having any issues with it. So I picked up a handful more of those to take with me. I need suggestions on what I should do for my Class 3 body-wise. I have talked on here a couple of times about my interior with the skeletons, and I've shown my cliffhanger body, and I've talked about how I was going to point it out, and I could still do that. My annoyance with this particular body is the entire bed's cut out. I didn't paint this body and I didn't cut this body. I bought this body off of a individual on the Brazen Scale fan page on Facebook who posted it for sale. The gentleman's name was Chad. Did a fantastic job painting the body, but I don't want to build a bed. I already built a bed. Is my comp stance on point? Absolutely. Rocking my Hey Dudes on the rocks with my feet all curled over the rocks. Perfect comp stance. You know we got it. Comp stance on point all the time. Have a body that looks damn close to that one. I'm sure it looks fantastic if it looks like that one, because that one looks great. But, like I said, the hood has been cut. He had it on a Pro V2 chassis, and he had the front hoops Was it on a Pro V2? It must have been on a high-low. It must have been on a high-low. He had the front hoops coming through. Hell, I don't know. It doesn't line up to anything. But he had cut out, might have been on a C1 Pro, I suppose, but he'd cut out slots in the hood for shock hoops to go through. And I wish they weren't there. But I like the body, and I want to use the body, but I don't want to have to deal with it. So, kind of annoying. Can't make up my mind on what body to run on what truck. It was easy for me on the C1 and C2 because they're carbon fiber bodies, and that's what I was going to run. But the Class 3, I haven't figured it out yet. Going to do a Yoda cab and bed. Just trying to decide if I should do an interior. You should always do an interior. That way you don't have to do extra crap. This interior doesn't weigh anything at all. I don't have to do a bunch of extra crap for extra points. So, right now, I think my Class 3 plan is I'm going to buy a 4-door Mojave body and cut it down to just be an extended cab and also narrow it. That way I can still build a 2-row interior. My issue with the standard cab is the length of it compared to how short I made the bed. It makes it, well behind. Basically the grill lines up with the servo, which is fine. I could cut the front of the chassis off if I wanted to, but I could also make a 1-inch extended cab to move the body forward and not have to deal with that. Creep body, ecto body, a little longer. I don't know. They are a little longer than the cliffhanger. Seems funny the shock hoops can stick through the hood, but you have to hide them in the bed. I saw that come up the other day, and I hadn't thought about it like that. Class 1, you have to hide them regardless whether they're through the bed or through the body, because anything that protrudes through the body has to be covered. But Class 2 and Class 3, yeah, you could have the shock hoops through the hood and be totally visible and be totally fine. I don't know. Not my rules. I didn't make them up. Cliffhanger cab only. I don't want the cab only because I want to do 2-row interiors. 2-row cage, 2-row interiors is a lot more points. So I thought about cutting the ever-loving piss out of this Proline metric body because it fits pretty well other than being huge in stock form. The wheelbase is reasonably close. If I didn't have the hard body bed mounted on here, if I didn't have the bed on here, you could be able to see a little better, but the wheelbase is pretty close. It is an extended cab. I could just cut the hell out of this, and I'm pretty sure even the interior, yeah, the interior drops right in. Like, I wouldn't even have to change my interior at all. It fits perfect. I don't know. I won that metric body at Nationals last April, so I've had that body for a year, and I just painted it like a month ago now. So it wouldn't really hurt my feelings if I chopped it up and ended up throwing it away, I guess. I mean, I don't like doing that, but I didn't pay for it. I don't know. It doesn't have a drop bed. Maybe I just use the cab, the extended cab off of it, and use my custom bed. Just an idea. It did go through all the trouble of mounting the bed, though, to the cab. It's nice and sturdy. I gotta get the hang of the four-wheel steer thing. I've never had a four-wheel steer truck before. I always did dig if I was doing anything because I didn't like having the extra electronics and extra stuff. You got the hiccups now. I'm fighting hiccups off. Just use the cab. Yeah, I might. Not too wide for a C3. Oh, I'd definitely cut it right down the middle and narrow it. So like the hood is removable, and there's like an engine bay in the inside of that. I would cut all that stuff out of there, and I'd probably take whatever the maximum amount I could out of the width of the body and glue it back together and then wrap it so it wouldn't fall apart. On that new printer, I went for a test print straight to a cage for a power wagon for my high-low because I have a set of 10-2 axles and a power wagon body. Hopefully it was one of Harley's cage files. If so, I'm sure it'll be fine. If the test print went fine, I'm sure that the actual print will print just fine and dandy as well. So, yeah, this is what I was jacking with this morning before I had to go pick the kiddo up. It was one of Harley's files. Good. Good. Support the people who support the hobby. I can't fathom the amount of hours that both Harley and Scale Builders Guild put into videos and content throughout the week. It's insane. I would love to film more of what I'm doing around here to show you guys, like, when I'm setting up machines or while I'm machining a part, kind of explain what's going on. But man, when the machines are running, you can't get good audio, and it is during normal business hours, so people walk through the door, the phone rings, and it always happens at the worst time. So it makes it kind of hard. If I were going to film anything, I'd basically have to voice over anything with machining, because 9 times out of 10, the router is running in the background cutting chassis, and that thing is loud in itself. And there's never a day during the week that I don't cut a chassis. So not having that running, it's pretty rare. And like I said, that's the noisiest machine in the shop. And then when you're running the mill or the lathe, I don't have like a screw type air compressor. I just have a regular piston type compressor, and it is inside the shop. So running the mill or the lathe, the air compressor kicks on again, and like I said, it makes for terrible videos. But I would like to be able to show you guys, the process at which, prototyping happens, and like, the amount of time that I spent on getting the face of this wheel just right, you know what I mean, with no extra machine marks in it. Or like this particular wheel face, the backside of it is a blemish because it picked up another little piece of material and made some scratch marks in it, some heavier than acceptable marks. But I'd love to be able to show you guys that process, but making it interesting and not having machine noises overrunning anything you're trying to say is damn near impossible. Like I said, without going back through and doing a voiceover, it's really just not going to happen. So even with, mounting a GoPro or the like inside the machine with coolant running, you get to see about a half a second of anything, and then coolant hits the part or the tool and completely just sprays coolant everywhere. I don't know how many gallon per hour the pump is on this lathe for the coolant, but it is powerful, and it sprays coolant everywhere. So to be able to show you the 1/16 inch end mill that is cutting the pattern in the wheel faces that is covered in coolant is impossible. And if you don't run coolant on that little 1/16 inch end mill, you're not going to get any video of it anyway, because it is going to instantly break. So, I guess I could show, the bigger tools. The bigger tools, you can turn coolant off. You can run them dry for video purposes. You're not going to do a whole run without coolant, but, you could do 1 or 2 pieces without coolant to at least get some sort of a video, some sort of visual out of it. But, like I said, the voiceover thing, I could do it, but I hate the sound of my own voice, and it's hard. It's just hard to do. Like this, talking to you guys right now, I can't hear my own voice other than in my ears, so kind of is what it is. The bomb wheels and the mammoths, like I was talking earlier in the stream, I've got material here. I have finished the other things that I was using the lathe for, so now they are at the top of my to-do list on this machine. All of the wheels, I guess we can talk about this here now. all of the wheels start out as 2¼ inch aluminum 6061 raw stock. This is a used hoop off of one of my trucks. It was a blem on the backside, and it's got a broken tap in the front of it. Pause. So here is an M2.5 tap. Come on. This tap is about $45. This tap's brother, I opened the package of and dropped him, and he broke before I even got the very first hole tapped. So that was cool. Then the very next hole, this was the very first wheel hoop that I used the live tooling on the lathe to tap. So the very first tap I broke in my hand, basically I dropped it out of my hand setting up the machine. Then the second tap, the very first hole I went to tap, broke the tap. Gonna be impossible for me to show you, but there is a broken tap in this hole. So anyway, this is the barrel of the wheel, 6061. This is the lock ring. You know, this is all standard for you guys that have seen zero offset wheels, except the face is not machined into the barrel of my wheel like a TGH or a shift is. So you've got your lock ring here, goes over the top, and then the faces of all the wheels come off the lathe blank. They come off the lathe just like this. So when they come off the lathe, I have the choice of what face pattern I want to machine. And then I've got a fixture in the mill that will accept 16 faces, wheel faces, at a time. And no matter what wheel face pattern I decide to machine, the offsets are all the same because that fixture is in the machine in the same place every time. So if I am machining mammoths in the morning before noon and I come back from lunch and decide that I want to switch to bombs, then I just change the program to the other program and click go again and don't have to change anything else. All the tools are the same. The order of all the tools are the same because I program everything myself as well. For anybody who does machining or has ever done a machine tool program, tool pathing, anything like that, any cam work, you typically, well, as much as I've seen, you get in a routine of how you program things, your order of operations. And when you're making similar parts like these wheel faces, the patterns, while the pattern is different, you can basically assume that it's going to use the same tools to do it. So you just program everything in the same order so you don't have, I mean, the machine changes tools, it does what it does. It doesn't matter realistically if you change the order of the tools, but it does take longer. So like, you know, if you have 25 tools in the machine, and tool number 1 is in the machine at the time, and the next, let's say this, the beadlock ring holes, takes an 1/8 inch drill. If you're drilling these 1/8 inch holes, and then you need to switch to something to do the pattern on the inside here, if tool 1 is your drill, you don't want tool 16 to be the next tool, because then it has to wheel the carousel around extra time. So I personally set up all my tools, you know, tool 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like these take 5 different tools. So all 5 tools are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all in the same order every time. And I know that doesn't mean anything to most of you, but it does to me. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Because I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. So I got my C1 out before my remote messed up, and it did very well. Hoping to run C1, C2, and C3 comp this Sunday at Canyon. Hopefully you can get a new radio and get comfortable with it. That's always the worst part, is getting comfortable with a new radio. If you switch brands or switch models and they feel different in the hand, it takes a second to get used to. So, yep. Yeah, these little end mills, Darwin, these little end mills, you know, it doesn't take much to break them. You breathe on them and they're broke. Just like I said with this tap, I popped they come in these little plastic containers, and there were two of them side by side, and I popped the one side open, and both lids opened, and the one that I was trying to get out slipped out of my finger because my brain went, oh shit, the other one opened. And the one that I was trying to grab slipped out of my hand and landed, on the workbench and just broke. I'm like, oh, that's cool. There went $40 right there. So, efficiency and time is money. It is. Personally, I don't run a machine shop. This isn't Boeing. We're not making, we're not squeezing every second out of machines. It's just me in my shop making RC car parts. So it's not hypercritical that I be super efficient, but it also annoys me standing there watching it, waiting on it to do something. So, the lathe is pretty quick about tool changes, but the mill is not. So, got the Noble Pro, and I'm hoping I can get used to it too. I'm hoping it gets here in time. I don't have a problem getting used to the Noble Pro. I like that radio, but I was going from a FlySky, a hacked GT3C. So, the feel of the radio is quite a bit different between the two FlySky radios that I had, but it's not super different. But I do like the button layouts of the Noble Pro better. Makes brazing something special. Yeah, there's not very many vendors in this market that design their own parts, prototype their own parts, and manufacture their own parts in-house. That's one of the things that me and Wesley pride ourselves on is how much of this we do without any outside assistance. Like I said, getting stuff laser cut, yeah, I don't have a laser cutter. I want one, and maybe that's in the next 10-year plan. But as of right now, I don't have a laser cutter, and I don't even have room for a laser cutter. I have enough power now to run one in my shop, but I don't have the capital for one. And then the 3D printed parts, the dual servo mounts and such, that that's multi-jet fusion printed. You're looking at $400,000 to outfit your shop with that setup. So again, I'd love to have that so we could do literally everything in-house, but it's just not possible. This machine behind me here took me a long time to be able to save money to afford to just write a check for it. That's another thing that I'm proud to say is that I own my machines. I don't make monthly payments on machines. The only payment that I make is my Fusion 360 subscription. So all of my tooling is owned outright. All of my machines are owned outright. My wide format printer is owned outright. Yeah, I gotta have subscription for the program for that as well. But it took a long time, a lot of hard work to be able to buy that stuff. And I would love, this gets back to how I would love to film videos and show you guys the how and the why a lot of times, but it just, with machines running, it makes it very difficult, very, very difficult. And I've got all kinds of cameras, and I've got lav mics, and I've got all the stuff, but it's just taking the time to be able to actually do it is the difficult part. So, I'm using a GT5 and GT5C, so I guess we'll see. Yeah, I didn't use any of the GT5 stuff. I had a hacked like the original Fly Sky radio, and then when that took a shit on me, I don't remember what happened. I think I fell. I had the radio in my hand and I fell, and I punched the ground with the radio in my hand and broke it in half. So then I bought a hacked GT3C from RC Addict, and I ran that radio for 4 years or so, I would say. And I like that radio too. And I didn't need to get rid of it. The only annoyance, I'll tell you what the biggest annoyance of that radio was, only having 3 characters for the model name. When I had 12 trucks bound to that radio and you only have 3 characters to be able to name the vehicle, I had a hard time when I got up, a certain number of trucks. It got hard to remember what I named that stuff. And when C2, C1, whatever, it only takes 2 or 3 characters, but when you have, what do you call a base camp? What do you call the 1.9 Wraith? What do you call your standard Wraith? What do you call your bomber? What do you call, there was only 3 characters to name your model, and I hated that. The Noble Pro, you can actually name, actually type out a name. So that was helpful. Just made a lifelong customer. I hope so. Like I said, man, Wesley and I try really hard to do as much of this stuff in-house as we can. And it gets difficult. But we just press on. We know that things aren't always in stock, and we know that things sell fast. And the easy thing to do would be to outsource manufacturing somewhere, and have large investments of finished product on the shelves. But that's not what I want. I want to manufacture everything. I want there to be no question where or how a part was made. I want everybody to know that bought the part that I did it, or that Wesley did it. So, and the other thing is our product line is pretty big now too. We have 4 different models of chassis, and we have multiple different models of wheels, and all of that stuff requires machining or manufacturing of some sort. And there's only so many hours in the day. So if I have to choose between making 50 sets of wheels this week or making chassis this week, I'm probably going to pick making chassis, because that's what we do. So the wheels, I love making wheels. Wheels are so super fun, and I made a real big investment to be able to manufacture wheels. So I definitely want to make wheels, but chassis sell every day. So it is what it is. I'd like to learn how to design my own chassis just to know and try and test. Yeah, I mean, it's learning how to do it isn't the hard part. Learning how to do it right, or learning how to do it efficiently, is the hard part. Harley has a video on his channel of how to design your own chassis. You start with a pair of calipers and a skid plate in front of you, and then you just kind of measure critical dimensions from there. And once you have your critical dimensions, you just make it look how you want it to look. Yeah, I wrote on the receiver lid or inside the body. Yeah, you could write down the model names or whatever of whatever truck, but I'm getting old. My brain just trying to remember everything, trying to remember what I named everything. That's why I had to start a book for all my programs. Like the number of programs in my mill now is astronomical. I need to go through there and remove a lot of like the V1 and V2, the non-final parts, the old revisions. I need to go through and delete the programs because now I'm having to go back, like into Fusion or whatever, and see what the latest revision was called. So, and I need to go through my book, my print book, because everything in my print book is labeled with the program file. But if I made a revision to it, that print book's out of date with the file number. So I need to go back through that stuff too, and re-update or reorganize all my file work for the machines. The lathe, that's all square. I've got all that stuff figured out. But the mill, I've had the mill for 5 years now, so there's 5 years worth of programs. I've never deleted a program out of the mill. So there's 5 years worth of programs stuck in that thing that there's quite a few old files that don't need to be in there anymore. Brazen files that are old, other vendor files that are old. Hell, I think the one skid plate for a specific vendor, I think we're on like revision 27 of it or something like that. Like, so that means there's 27 files in the machine for each side of the part. So like, the top side of the part is one file, the bottom side of the part is another file, and then the side holes is another file. So there's at least 3 files per skid plate in the machine. So it gets a little unruly pretty quick. I'll probably do that this weekend. If the weather's crap like they're saying it's going to be this weekend, I may spend Saturday afternoon sitting in front of my controller on the lathe deleting old programs. The thing I struggle with is finding the center of holes and getting them in the right place. So here's a trick I'll teach you about finding the center of holes. Okay? And we'll use just regular inch measurements. So let's say you are trying to find the center to center of this outside hole to this outside hole. Take your calipers, zero them out, measure outside to outside of that hole. In this case, it is 20 millimeters. So now we know outside to outside. We also know that this hole, I'm sorry, hang on, that was inches. It's 2 inches. So this is 51.5 millimeters, okay, outside to outside. Then you measure the hole diameter, which is 3 millimeters, and subtract that from your big measurement. So you measured outside to outside. Now you need half of this hole and half of this hole. Well, half of this hole and half of this hole equals one hole. So you don't have to sit here and try to eyeball center to center. Measure outside to outside, and then subtract to the diameter of the hole. You can use 3 millimeters or 1/8 inch. It's all pretty standard. So if you're using inches, and this is 2 inches, and then this is 1/8, pretty easy math to figure that out. ID to OD gives you center to center every time. Yeah, but so the easiest way to do that would be with like a gauge pin or something. If you took your driver and stuck through here, that would give you something solid to measure up against. That would, doing it that way is easy also. But the way my brain works is I always measure outside to outside and then subtract the diameter of the hole. See, I taught somebody something today. Well, I hope I did anyway. I did have a conversation the other day with a guy about a set of calipers that concerned me a little bit with how long this gentleman had been using calipers and didn't know how many places you can measure on a caliper. I showed him how to measure depth using this, and he was mind blown. He's like, you can measure depth with, yes, you can measure depth with this guy here. From here to here is the same distance as here to here, which is the same distance as here to here, which is also the same distance as from here to here. These are all the same dimension. You can measure with calipers in a lot of different places. But I was kind of blown away with this person. It wasn't anybody in the RC industry, but it was a person who, as long as they've been machining stuff and as long as they've been doing what they've been doing, it was kind of surprising that they didn't know all the different places to measure with a caliper. But whatever. Calipers don't have a depth gauge. Every caliper slides out. It's built into the thing. As you open this, it pops out of the end. So like the back side of this brass weight, just pop that down in there. Go flush down on top of it. It's 0.375 deep. That way you're not trying to fiddle fart around. You know, there's really no other way to measure that specific dimension without having the backside there. So I'd be surprised if there was a set of calipers that didn't do that. I've never seen a set of calipers that don't do that. Hell, even the Harbor Freight calipers do that. I don't trust the measurement that you get off the Harbor Freight calipers, but they do that. So, well, hopefully somebody else learned something today. Plastic Harbor Freight calipers I could afford at the time. Yeah, if you're not doing anything critical, they're fine, but I'm pretty sure they do this. I don't think I have a set of plastic Harbor Freight calipers. I think in the passenger door pocket of my truck in the parking lot, I have a pair of metal Harbor Freight ones. Don't ask me why I keep calipers in the passenger door of my truck. But that's where they landed. I think they slid off the seat at some point and they landed in the door pocket, and I was like, that's fine, they can stay there, I don't use them for anything. But if I ever have to measure something on the side of the road, I will have calipers with me at all times, I guess. Yep. I've had these Fowlers. You know, these aren't the most expensive calipers in the world, these Fowler digital calipers, but I've had this exact pair for probably going on 10 years now. I have multiple other sets of calipers in the shop, but these basically live on my main workbench. Just for like when I'm prototyping stuff, when I'm trying to figure stuff out. And these Fowlers will also go in my backpack when I take my laptop home. When I'm working on stuff at home, working on the computer at home, again, sometimes my brain, like if I'm trying to think about how far I need to move something, like let's say I need to move at 0.1, but I don't know if 0.1 is going to be enough. It helps me to visualize what 0.1 is. You know, this is 0.99, but same thing. It helps me visualize how big an eighth of an inch or how big a quarter of an inch or how big 5 millimeters is, if I can actually physically see it on the pair of calipers while I'm designing on the computer. You know, designing a chassis on the computer, yeah, you're designing it in an arbitrary inches, because, you know, if I'm doing a chassis, it's longer than the screen of the computer, so it's not in 1-to-1. So if you're trying to get the width of the chassis where you want it, it helps me to visualize I want this 0.455 tall, or whatever that comes out to in metric, which I probably designed it in metric. So, Power Wagon cage is over a 13-hour print, and I've learned a few things thanks to you. Happy about it. I can't. Printers are just so damn slow, man. I can. If I was building a cage for that body, I could make a metal one in 45 minutes. I can't wait 13 hours for the printer to do it. The printed ones are great, and the files from Harley are fantastic. I just personally cannot wait on a printer. Do you like high clearance or straight links for your trucks? My C2, I found high front and straight rear. I almost always run high clearance rear links, and I almost always run a straight front link. I say a straight front link, but they're usually always bent links, but I bend them. I turn them to where the bend is out, so visually they're flat from the side of the truck. Because if you get hung up right here, if you get something coming up the skid, they're coming up the links, and they're high clearance links, you create a catch point at the front of the skid, where a straight link provides a smooth transition to the skid, and then in the rears I run bent links. So like I said, the fronts are usually high clearance type links, but I roll them to the side so that they look flat. Purely because of the transition at the front of the skid. I like that I can start a long print, wish for the best, and go to sleep. Yeah, but then you can wake up to a freaking disaster also. And my printer is not at home, so like there's too much expensive shit in my shop to leave stuff like that running when I'm not here. I'm deathly afraid of a malfunction causing my shop to burn down. I don't leave batteries unattended. I don't leave chargers unattended. I don't leave printers unattended. Yeah. I've seen too much bad stuff happen. A buddy of mine just lost a shop. It's been about 2 months now, probably. Just lost his entire shop to a fire. Cause is unknown officially, but he lost everything. Whether it was a battery that caught fire, or whether it was a DeWalt tool that caught fire, or whether it was a welder cord laying on the ground that got ran over by something, whatever it was, probably $500,000 worth of stuff gone. Like, the concrete slab didn't even survive. It's a pile of dirt now. So there was a lot of stuff in there that went up in flames because of what, and it terrifies me to think. I don't even think that $2 million in coverage would. I've got business insurance. I've got insurance on everything, but I don't want to have to deal with it. I mean, even my machines have insurance policies specifically on them, and anything with a VIN has to have its own policy. My agent wanted me to keep he wanted me to give him like a general value of the crawler stuff. And I'm like, man, that stuff, it changes week to week. 1 week there could be, $5,000 worth of stuff. 1 week there could be $25,000 worth of stuff. It depends on what I've machined that week. It depends on what trucks I've bought, what trucks are at home, what trucks are here. It's wild. Fire is terrible. Fire is terrifying, and it's not something that I even want to think about. But anyway, insure your shit. And if you have a detached garage or a barn and you keep things in that detached garage or barn, call your insurance agent and verify what your coverage is on additional structures. If you have an attached garage, that's covered under your normal homeowner's policy. It is what it is. It's your house. But if you have a barn or a shop that's detached, as in Matt's case, that is under a separate clause in your insurance. So there's a special coverage. You know, your house, let's say you have a $200,000 house. Well, typically your house is going to be insured for $350,000 because of cost of materials and labor and whatever to put it back together. But your barn could be only insured for $40,000 or $50,000. So if you have, you know, $10,000 worth of RC cars out there and a couple of dirt bikes, a lawnmower, you know, random welders and random tools and assorted man stuff in your barn, it's pretty easy to get over that $50,000 threshold. So if you have a detached structure, call your insurance company and make sure that it is covered. That C-channel prototype chassis is at least $1 million. Yeah, it should be. Where is that? Okay, hang on just a second. I can see it. Enough of you guys have asked about it over the last couple live streams. I figure I'll show it again. So this has been a work in progress for a couple of years now. It hasn't been a top priority project at all whatsoever. But it is something that I want to finish. Hang on again, dang it. I have multiple 2mm drivers, but none of them are on the table over here. You're making me sick. Yeah, I mean, but it's the scary truth, dude, because if it happened to you, it doesn't matter how many years you've been paying that insurance company, it is their job to not pay you back. And that's just how it goes. So anybody who does machining will know or will notice the machining marks inside here. I'd spent a lot of time in toolpath managing trying to get the inside of the pattern inside the rails to be pretty. And I think I succeeded because come on, don't do this to me now. There we go. To be able to control the tool paths inside there, you know, there was an 1/8" end mill going through here, you know, carving all this stuff out, and then doing the finishing strategies to make it look pretty. Took a long time because I don't know what I'm doing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am not a machinist. I am not a designer. I'm not an engineer. But I can figure shit out. And Wesley has been working on this again, but not this exact file. This was based off of the original ATL Pro, like the TRX4 conversion ATL Pro. And it just, we got really close with this. And the ultimate goal isn't to machine these. You know, the ultimate goal is not to machine these for production. The ultimate goal is to stamp these in aluminum. But I wanted to be able to prototype and test. So manufacturing this, I think Wesley still has a set and I have a set. There are only 2 of these ever. And we need to get back on this project because it is a project that I think both of us are excited about and both of us want to see happen. But it is a project that takes a lot of time management and a lot of time dedication. So, like this particular rail, this was the first rail that I made. And, no, that's a lie. The other rail, this rail, is the first rail that I made because there's a blemish at the back of it. But the very first rail, if I only made one rail from just setting up the machine and doing the tool paths and stuff like that, if you calculate all that time involved, there's about 35 hours in this one rail. And that's insane. And nobody's going to pay for that. And to manufacture a pair of rails like this, to machine them, to do a pair is probably just over an hour worth of work. Hour and a half, maybe, by the time you finish it out and make it presentable. And again, nobody wants to pay that. And I wouldn't want anybody to pay that. But, you know, the ability to be able to do this is, I like it. It's pretty cool. And it doesn't weigh anything. This aluminum rail weighs less than this carbon fiber rail does. It's virtually non-existent. And the fact that it's a C channel and it has, you know, multiple dimensions makes it pretty rigid. It's, you know, you can twist it, but not nearly as much as you would think you could. Because it is 6061, and at the thinnest, cross section, it is 60 thou, 50 thou, 50 thou at the thinnest, and 60 thou on the thickness of the rail. So there's a substantial amount of material there, but it doesn't weigh anything at all. So I want to pay for that when you're done with it. That with a pile of Vanquish parts and axles. So this particular chassis, when I got it done, I mocked this up with a Team Garage Hack T210 trans and Vanquish Curry D44s. And the way I had it weighted, you can probably scroll back on the Brazen page. At one point, I had posted a picture of this chassis balancing on a 2mm driver, right underneath the skid, right under the center of the front of the skid. And nobody noticed that it was a C-channel chassis, so that was kind of cool. But this chassis was balanced on a 2mm driver with, you know, fully RTR, and that was kind of cool. I like to try to balance my trucks on drivers for no reason at all other than to say that it balances. So, yep, just weird shit. What else you guys want to talk about tonight, now that we've shown a couple-year-old prototypes? Oh, man. I keep this chassis assembled with just a skid plate and a single brace, and it sits on my workbench as a reminder of things to do, things that I want to do, things that I want to finish. Sorry, trying to put this back together before I lose the screws. Not that I don't have a pile of screws sitting around that doesn't really matter what the screw is, but I did. I lost a screw. It had 3 in it when we started. Now it's only got 2. Damn it. It's got to be around here somewhere. But I keep it mocked up with a Pro Skid and this one brace in the back and a pair of shock hoops back there for no real reason other than it looks cool sitting on the bench. And, you know, you guys can see in the camera, it's shiny on the inside. The camera doesn't do that any justice at all. I wish that I could get that portrayed in a picture or something to show you guys. Again, the amount of time, look at the dust on this thing. Ugh. The amount of time that I spent doing the tool paths on this to make it look pretty inside where no one's going to see is almost embarrassing. A more local series near me said no comp chassis, so I was a special exemption on Sunday. No comp chassis? So you're holding a comp and you can't use comp chassis. Okay. Sure. Yeah, pictures won't do this any justice at all. And like seeing the reflections on it makes it look rough as well, but it is glass smooth. Like, I mean, even look at the skid plate. To get a rainbow reflection off of Delrin plastic that's been machined with no, you know, there's no RGB lights around here. These rainbows in the reflections are because the stuff is smooth. And then, like the skid plates, I don't have a countersunk screw around here. The amount of time that I spent on the countersinks, making sure that when you tightened the transmission to the skid plate, that the screws weren't like sunk way down into the skid plate or sticking out at all. Like, the amount of time I spent dialing in the depths on that stuff is insane also. Like, it's just too much. It's things that, like, I hope that people care about because I cared and it took a long time to get it the way I wanted it. And, like, I feel like it's probably one of those things that most people wouldn't even notice unless it was wrong. And, like, if the screw was hanging way out of the skid, people would be like, well, damn, that doesn't fit where the hell. If it's too deep, they probably wouldn't care much, but if it's hanging out, it'd be bad. But, like, mine are perfectly flush. And it's not just my skids either, because I do manufacture skids for other vendors. So all of the time that, like you said, the pride that I took in dialing that stuff in isn't just on my products. It's on every product that leaves here, whether it's Brazen or the respective vendor that it goes to. And, you know, I'd love to just spout off names as to who I make parts for, but some of them I'm bound by non-disclosure, and some of them I, you know, don't know that they want that information out there. But they should, because I take a lot of pride in the stuff. In all of it. So. And that's what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to do videos to show you guys, like, why that stuff matters. Like, I wish I had a screw, a countersunk screw sitting around here, so that I could try to show it on camera how flush it is. But anybody who's bought a Pro Skid is going to be able to attest to that. Next time you have your truck in your hands, flip it over and notice how smooth that screw is. So, oh man. Well, I do, and C1 Pro just ordered to be my first product. I was building a G-Speed, but I didn't like them. The G-Speed product line, there's not a problem with the G-Speed product line. There's not a problem with the customer support. There's not a problem with any of that stuff. It's, everybody has their flavor. Everybody has their taste. I'm sure there are people who much prefer that stuff over mine. So you'll be hard pressed to get me to say anything negative, because I've worked with and I've known Gabe for a long time. We're not best friends, but I walk up to the dude and, hey, give the man a hug at a comp. It's, there's pictures of us standing next to each other at competitors on course, but smiling and laughing together. So, and I manufactured his stuff for quite a few years as well. That's not a secret. Up until about 2019 or so, I manufactured his G10 chassis stuff. So they're vastly different in design to ours. Here's a G-Speed V4. And if you wanted to compare this, pause. We've talked about this on multiple streams, but if you wanted to compare the G-Speed V4 to the ATL Pro V2, there's a lot of belly difference between the two at the same shock heights. And you can build, if you build these two chassis with the exact same components, you're going to have a truck that drives drastically different. Now, that being said, there are suggested setups for each of these chassis, and those suggested setups are different. So, like, I would typically recommend, if somebody's running an ATL Pro V2, that they run somewhere in the 80 to 86 millimeter shock height range. What that's going to do is bring the entire height of the chassis down, bringing this belly height back to similar to the G-Speed, right? So your overall, so like the motor mount locations, when you have the shock mounts at the same heights, our motor mount locations are about 5 millimeters lower. And when you drop the chassis an additional 5 millimeters with the shock heights, you've now lowered the motor by 10 millimeters. You've lowered the transmission by 5 millimeters. And it works out. And the component sizes and component weights are much lower now than they used to be. So it allows you to, if you wanted to run this truck with 90 millimeter shocks, you still can. And our motor mount is still going to be, 5 millimeters lower than most chassis on the market. So you're still going to have a low center of gravity chassis, but you're going to have high belly clearance. And then when you compare something like the C1 Pro to the Pro V2, you'll notice that there's really not much, if any, of a detriment to having a flat skid like the C1 Pro, which is the aluminum chassis in this picture here. There's just that little notch right there at the bottom back of the skid. This little notch right here is the only difference between a Class 1 chassis and a Class 2 and 3 chassis. Yeah, there you go. There's a pretty decent view of it right there. And the motor mount locations are the same, and the rear upper link mount heights are the same. So geometrically, these two chassis are very similar to each other. But then when you compare it to something from a competitor such as G-Speed, that belly height is quite a bit different. And this G-Speed is his newest angled skid chassis. But when you hold the bumper heights up the same, there's quite a bit of belly height difference there. But again, the suggested setups are going to be different with these two chassis. And then if you look at something like the TGH hog chassis, when you compare that to something like the G-Speed, when you mount the skids in the same or similar locations, they're much more much more similar in belly height, but they're also closer to each other in suggested setup. So it all varies, and it's all different for all the manufacturers. So the difference is I'm sitting here talking to you about it. So and I'm not willing, and I'm not afraid to show you and tell you, how or why. So if that earns you as a customer, I'm going to keep on doing it, because that's why I'm doing these live shop hangouts, because you get the raw, you get the answers. I don't sugarcoat stuff. Sometimes I have to give you a little bit of a political answer, but I don't really have to sugarcoat anything. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. Anyway, it's getting close to bedtime here, so if you guys want to see anything or have anything else to say, speak up or forever hold your peace till next Monday. If not, I guess look for more information on this unnamed prototype for the rest of the week. Yeah, what works for one person might not work for another person's driving style. Absolutely. You can hand somebody the truck that just won nationals, hand it to somebody else, and they absolutely hate it. So that's why there's so many chassis on the market, is because everybody's style and everybody's driving habits are totally different. So there is not a specific perfect chassis on the market. None of them are. But we have options for that reason. So, if you like something, if you like a truck that you're taking out and doing steep breakovers, that's where the high-low comes into play. With the forward skid, forgive the pile of chassis falling off the bench underneath me. With the forward-mounted skid, you're going to get a bunch of breakover angle back here for climbing steep obstacles. Where if you had a rock ledge here, you're going to sneak this chassis up because of the size of the front tire. You're able to sneak the entire belly of the chassis up over an obstacle before you even get there. So then your rear link clearances come into play also, and then you've got all these different adjustments for all your squat and anti-squat, anti-dive, whatever you want to call it, to make the truck climb different or descend different. So you got a whole different style here. Then the C1 Pro and the Pro V2 are similar to each other, but it's, do you want a flat back railed with bolt-on hoops in the front and the rear, or do you want an angled skid chassis with integrated hoops? But geometrically and driving-wise, these two chassis are going to drive very similar, where the high-low isn't going to drive anything like these trucks do. When you look at the belly heights on all of them, they're all very similar. It looks like the high-low hangs way down, but like I said, with the size of the front tire and the front tire placement, you sneak right over top of the obstacles. Pictures don't do many chassis justice. It was kind of hard to describe how different the new high-low was versus everything else on the market. Yeah, when we released the high-low with the skid being so far forward, it was kind of difficult, and it still is. We still get questions to this day about links. We had a guy the other day ask about swapping from a Pro V2 to a high-low, whether he was going to need different links. And the answer is absolutely yes, you will have to have new links, because the skid plate's mounted 2 inches further forward on the high-low than it is on the Pro V2. So, anyway, I'm ready to get out of here for the evening. 5 minutes past my bedtime already, so I think we're going to wrap this one up and come back next Monday for some more fun. And we'll see if we can get Wesley back on with us again next week. If not, totally fine. I can yammer at myself on a camera if he's not up for it. But, yeah, thanks, guys. I will talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.